My friend's name was Mallory, and this happened to her sometime in 2017. While she had Instagram, it was actually one of the years that Instagram really started blowing up. Mallory was 19 years old, and it was 2017, which meant that school was out for the summer. I don't remember what month it took place at, but I think it was sometime in the beginning of summer vacation. Mallory was home from college and she was on Instagram pretty much every day, mainly posting and checking out new things. However, she received what seemed to be a really strange looking request on Instagram. Her Instagram was private, so the only people who could see her post were her friends that followed her and that she's followed, and accepted their request. Mallory opened up to realize that the profile pic was the name Jeffy. Now, Jeffy is in Jeff or something like that. The picture was him himself, probably maybe at the age of 20 or something. Mallory started talking to Jeff, which his nickname is Jeffy, and mainly because Jeff was a huge fan of SML. Very surprising, but yet again, Mallory decided just to talk to Jeff. Jeff had mentioned some things that he was interested in, like going to the movies, hang out with friends, and do other things. Mallory seemed to like this guy, so she and Jeff kept talking that night. When Jeff wanted to video chat with her, Mallory just said that she wasn't really comfortable yet since she met him. Of course, Jeff said okay, and they kept chatting every now and then in texts. Sometime one night, Mallory was pretty much getting ready for bed when Jeff kept asking her to send her a picture of herself. Mallory was not really comfortable with this, seeing that this Jeff person was now starting to act really creepy. He started asking her some really inappropriate questions. Some personal questions like, where are you from, and etc. Mallory kept telling him that he needs to respect her privacy and to, basically shut up. Jeff honestly shut up, and Mallory just went to bed that night. However, probably around 1 in the morning, Mallory woke up to hear that their glass was being shattered from the back door. Curious as she was, she ended up waking up. Her mom honestly asked her what was going on. As soon as Mallory and her mom walked down, they saw what seemed to be a man who was rummaging through the living room. The man looked up and saw, and who he had a large knife. He ended up taking off the way he came, and he somehow disappeared into the night. The cops were called, but they had never found out who the man was. Mallory thought that it might have been Jeff, and as soon as she was going to show the cops the Facebook, the Instagram image, and even the account, as well as the Facebook account Jeff gave her, but they were taken down. So that person must have been Jeff, trying to find out where Mallory lived. She doesn't know how he managed to find out where she lived, but this was honestly the scariest encounter with some creep on Instagram Mallory's ever came across. Now to this day, Mallory's more careful on who she adds on Instagram. And if you have Instagram, be careful on who you add on there. You never know who is behind the Instagram account. One of my friends who used to go to high school with me, which we'll call her Madison. Madison and had Instagram in 2016, and this happened to her sometime in March. It was around shortly after Madison's 16th birthday, and both of her parents work in the medical field, so basically pretty much whenever they were not home, she would be alone in the house. she knows certain rules, like don't go outside without letting them know or locking the door, don't let any random people in, and etc. Whenever Madison was home alone, she would go on Instagram and she would basically ended up talking to some people. However, one account that she was talking to was a woman named Emma. Emma was basically the same age as Madison, and Emma seemed to be a pretty nice girl. Ever since Madison's best friend, her name was Patricia, had moved away due to the fact that she was changing to a different state in the US. But since Madison lived in Canada, her friend was used to be living in Canada until her contract had ended, which resulted in her and her family moving back to the US. Now, Madison was pretty sad, knowing that her best friend, she had known for a couple years, had her contract with Canada ended, which meant she went back to the States. Madison was pretty sad, so she mainly turned her attention to the internet, and she usually was very quiet. The only time she would not be very quiet is if she was talking to people, such as partners for projects and etc. As Madison was basically on Instagram talking to Emma, Emma seemed to be the same age and lived maybe at least a town or two away from where Madison was. Now, since this was during the spring, Madison ended up texting Emma pretty much a lot. Even when Madison was in the middle of class and when she didn't have any classes, she would text Emma. Emma seemed pretty nice, although maybe a bit sketchy, but she seemed to have a few photos of herself. There was one what seems to be a picture of her in what seems to be in Ripley's aquarium. Now, Emma seemed pretty nice, so Madison chatted with Emma pretty much every day. There was a time where Emma asked if she could come over to meet Madison in person. Since Madison's parents weren't going to be home, this was the great opportunity for her to invite Emma into her house for the first time. She gave the address and everything to Emma, and she asked her parents one day before she left for school if her friend could come over. Of course, her parents were okay with that, as long as they followed the rules, as both of her parents were going to be working night shifts at that time. However, though, it was during the nighttime when Madison was on Facebook, basically chatting with her friends, when she ended up hearing what seemed to be a car pulling up in the driveway. She got a text from Emma on Instagram saying, "Hey, I'm here, Maddie." Madison got up and ended up looking over, but she froze in fear, realizing that it was not Emma, but it looked like to be a man in his early 40s. Madison honestly knew that this man had saw her, was immediately banging on the door, tried to yell, telling Madison to open up. Madison honestly had no idea what to do. She couldn't go get the police. She couldn't run up because this guy could break down the door. All Madison could do was just stare at this man. He had pretend to be Emma just so Madison could lure him to her house. Madison wanted to scream, but she couldn't. And this man started screaming and yelling. Realizing he couldn't break down the door since it was solid or something, at least it was strong built, he ended up walking away. He didn't walk back to his car though. Instead, he looked like he was going to go to the back door. That was Madison's cue to get out of the house. As soon as he was not in sight, she ran all the way to her next door neighbors, and they called the cops. When the cops came, Madison's parents returned home, and the cops ended up arresting the man. When they asked Madison if she knew this man, she said no, and that she had to go through the whole story of Instagram. Basically, this guy was having history of impersonating women and trying to get other people to come to their house or get them to invite him to their houses. Madison honestly stopped using Instagram since this incident, and the man was arrested. The Facebook account of Emma was taken down, though. Thankfully it was, as it turned out. Those photos of Emma were not real, but they were basically fake, as this man only did that to catfish people. Madison still thinks about this to this day, and she doesn't use Instagram anymore. Sometime in 2019, it was sometime in the summertime, and this took place with one of my good friends, which we'll call her Sadie and and even Chanel. Chanel and Sadie have been friends for as long as I can remember, and they're both from somewhere in Northern Carolina. In North Carolina, no, they lived in a pretty rural area, which they were nearby a forest preserve. Sadie and Chanel were both pretty much in their late 20s, and they wanted to hang out ever since the last time they hang out was graduation party. Since Sadie had gotten Instagram, she and Chanel decided that they would have a sleepover, as they had gotten along just fine ever since college. Since they hadn't seen each other in like 5 to 6 years, Sadie and Chanel thought that a sleepover would be the best thing to do. However, though, since Chanel was going to spend at least a few nights with Sadie, since Sadie lived at least 4 hours away from where Chanel lived. When on the first night there, they slept near the living room, to which it was by the back door, which was nearby some dense forests. Chanel, along with Sadie, were basically doing a live stream on Instagram when they ended up hearing some strange sounds. It sounded as if someone or something was walking on trees and branches, followed by them snapping. Of course, they were near the backyard, and the screen door was the one that was locked, but the glass door was not. Chanel and even Sadie listened for the sound, and they thought that it could have been maybe a coyote or any other wildlife animal wandering around. They showed the Instagram live stream to certain people, and they thought that it might have been a wild animal around. The next night, however, Sadie was on her Instagram and they were playing at the backyard, as all of a sudden Chanel ended up saying that there was something inside the forest. Of course, Sadie walked over closer while having her phone out for Instagram. But as soon as they got over, whatever the sound they were hearing was sounds of trees and branches snapping. They ended up looking over to see that there was a large body, massive fur that was about 15-25 feet away from them. At first they thought that it could have been maybe a bear or possibly a mountain lion, but that possibility had problems as well, as they couldn't really identify what creature it was. From the glow of the moon, they managed to realize that it looked to be a 10-foot tall creature. They couldn't really get a closer look or inspection of what it was. Whatever this creature was staring at them for a few minutes before taking off into the trees. As soon as he ran off, Chanel and Sadie ended up getting at least a video and a few photos of what they actually saw. However, though, they still wondered to this day what that creature was, but they had never encountered it again. People on Instagram were all commenting saying it was fake and that it wasn't real, but they all know for a fact that whatever they saw was definitely real. They ended up thinking that it could have been a bear, but no bear was able to run that quick or anything like that. Sadie and Chanel were pretty much are scared, and they ended up going upstairs to the bedroom to sleep for the night. They had never, ever saw anything like this again, and they still wonder what this creature really was. They don't know if it was Bigfoot or someone out there, maybe just pulling a prank. But whatever this creature was, it really blew up Instagram page on Sadie's post when Sadie posted the photo of what it believed to be a Sasquatch. They still wonder to this day about why it was there or something like that. But they had never seen anything like this again in the forest, and they are still not sure if it's still out there or not.